Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the Skew Zone, Week 14, the NFL's kickoff show and the fantasy football kickoff show for Week 14. I'm your host, Tampa Tones, and we're going to be joined by a lot of great guests today, including Alex Ruiz at the top of the hour. We're going to be bringing him in here shortly. We're going to be going over Chicago Bears and a little bit of fantasy football talk and what you guys might want to do with your rosters, Bears-wise down the stretch, perhaps Bears head coach next year, and other things. He's Row 7's own, Chicago's podcast own, Alex Ruiz. Alex, how are we doing tonight?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. How are we doing tonight?
Good. Thanks for being able to find time. We got a nice little schedule here. We got you, and then we're going to be joined by Jacksonville, Steven later, a Bucks guy, my man Matt, Bucks Stunna, and then we're going to end with some Arizona talk. So I'm glad we could get some Bears talk in. I love hearing different Chicago fans' perspective on the Bears. You're our third different Bears guest on the Skew Zone, so I appreciate you coming on. Where can the people follow you and your podcast at on Twitter?
Well, you can definitely check me out at Row 7 Podcast on Twitter, at Row 7 Podcast on Instagram. You can listen to Row 7 Podcasts on Google Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, Deezer, Stitcher, you name it, it's probably available. So I'm out there.
Yep, and it's mainly Chicago based, and it's all Chicago talk, but it's all sports talk. So go listen to it. I've been on there a couple times now. Just a fantastic podcast. We got a lot to talk about in Chicago lately, whether it's for the White Sox making moves, Bulls starting back up. But let's focus on the Bears here before they hibernate for the winter. It seemed so promising at the start of fall. It seemed like everything was gelling. I know they were winning close games to not great teams, but then that Thursday night came early on the year, and they got a great win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, October 8th to be exact. I remember that because, the next day wasn't a great day to remember living in Chicago as a Bucs fan. But Alex, since then, they beat the Panthers, and then after that, it's been a little downhill. It's been a loss to the Rams, an overtime loss to the Saints, a loss to the Titans, a loss to the Vikings, a loss to the Packers, and a loss to the Lions. I know there's a lot of good teams there, but man, that's 6 in a row, I believe. What do you think of this Bears team right now? Do you think they're still going to keep fighting for this year, or do you think they're done, the plug is pulled, and they're already evaluating coaches for next season?
The team has quit effectively weeks ago. I mean, they've lost 6 in a row. You just mentioned it right now. I think the one that really kind of stung the most was that loss to the Saints. It was definitely a winnable game. It was at home, but that one really right there just kind of put me over the edge as a Bears fan and really said that, man, this team does not have it.
Yeah, I remember that game. It was a Sunday, and when you said that the Bears, that game was a difference maker, I know it was, I believe, midway through the season. What in that particular game and then this Bears team since that point have you seen that's where you're like, wow, that's it. That's going to be the downfall of this Bears team?
I mean, we seen it this past Sunday. They don't know how to close out games. Where do you start as a Bears fan? I mean, there's frustration, but at this point, it's kind of a little bit of comical humor. I'm not even at the point where I'm watching the entire game anymore because I kind of know what to expect, essentially. The fact, going back to this last game without kind of talking about that Saints game, David Montgomery, huge first half, second half, crickets. So when you're up in a game, why you don't continue to run the ball is beyond me. Even I know that with no prior NFL coaching experience or peewees or high school or college, whatever it may be. But even I know that as a fan. So if I know that, I know the rest of Bears country knows the exact same thing as well, too.
Yeah, and once again, we're here with Chicago's sports-based podcast host, Row 7 podcast host, Alex Ruiz. And Alex, I think I couldn't agree more. The Bears have been historically built on running the football, and I think that's they had it going last week with Montgomery. I mean, he had 17 carries for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns, 4 receptions for 40 yards. You almost think, gee whiz, why don't they use him more? And not only that, why doesn't he get 20 carries a game? He's only reached the 20 carry mark once this year, and that was that overtime loss against New Orleans where they did play a close game. Do you think David Montgomery is the shining star not only for fantasy owners but for the Bears? Do you think he's their long-term running back of the future?
I would like to think so. I think if you give the guy some touches and 20 plus a game, he's got a chance to put up some solid fantasy points for you. You could see what he did this past weekend when he realistically only played a half. Going into the second half, he had 6 touches, which is, like I said, beyond me. But if you can kind of run the ball and establish a run game and be successful in the run game, it leads to putting up points. We've seen what they did. They put up 30 points this past week. The writing is on the wall. It's not a confusing message to the Bears. I don't know why that they seem to not be able to put it together, but here we are, 6 losses in a row with a lot of unanswered questions.
A lot of unanswered questions indeed. Speaking of unanswered questions, the quarterback position right now, it's Mitch Trubisky's. Previously, Nick Foles. Previously, Trubisky's. Before him, we've seen Tyler Bray a couple snaps this season. They worked out Deshaun Kaiser earlier this year as well. Obviously, nothing came of that. Alex, where do the Bears stand at their quarterback position? Obviously, it's not the best in the world. And what do you think happens next year? Are they going to do what the Buccaneers and Colts did, Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady like, and perhaps try and contend with their really high praised defense still? Or do you think they're going to flip the page, restart, and draft a young guy and hope for the best, better than Trubisky?
In my mind tells me that they probably just could go out there and just kind of and find themselves a veteran quarterback to kind of plug that hole. Obviously, it's all but certain that Trubisky is going to walk, which is perfectly fine. I know he wasn't the answer in Chicago. Foles, as we know, is not the answer in Chicago. But who's that veteran presence will be on the Chicago sideline? I'm not really sure. But my head tells me that they need to just blow it up. You need to start kind of letting your defensive pieces go, because I know that's what you're built on, the defense. But if you can move a guy like Khalil Mack, I don't know who would really be willing to take that contract. You should move him for draft picks. Akeem Hicks, he's another guy who's right around the 30-year-old mark. You might be able to get a couple draft picks for him. Eddie Jackson, Kyle Fuller, the same thing. That's just kind of my perspective on it. I think if they just go out there and get a quarterback, they're kind of putting a Band-Aid on really the big issue, because it's essentially starting from the top, and it's obviously working its way all the way down to, field level.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad because there was so much hope for Trubisky. He particularly had a 6-touchdown game a couple seasons back against the Buccaneers team, although their defense was a little run down. That type of game is crazy against anybody. And then they had high hopes bringing in a former Super Bowl winning quarterback, Nick Foles, to no avail to this point. I could name a couple veterans off the top of my head next year that could maybe help them compete now. Alex Smith, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick. But I do agree with you. I think if you could move Khalil Mack or an Akeem Hicks or an Eddie Goldman, who did sit out this season, why don't you? Why don't you try and get some draft picks? I mean, it's kind of crazy to say, but the Bears won that trade in the beginning. Now it's looking like the Raiders may win that trade, and look at what the Raiders have been able to do since that trade. Get a primetime running back and a nice little pass rusher. Once again, we're joined here for a couple more minutes by Row 7 podcast owner Alex Ruiz. Alex, do you think the head coach or the GM are open spots in Chicago next year? And if so, which one is probably more likely to be open?
They're both open. They have to be. There's no turning back at this point. Pace and Nagy have kind of both made their bed essentially in Chicago, and they need to pack their bags, because neither one of them have the answer. Neither one of them are the option for the foreseeable future. They might have a chance to go and run another organization potentially into the ground like they've done in Chicago, but head coach and GM open for vacancy.
Yeah, and Ryan Pace leaves a sour taste in my mouth because he's the same alumni shareholder as I am from Eastern Illinois. I honestly thought Nagy was a terrific hire, but man, obviously this year has changed my mind. I do think that perhaps both seats need to be filled. Both should be open. Alex, last question here real quick. It's a fantasy playoffs. You and your brother are playing. I think you guys are playing the 1 seed Bills Mafia, Brad. But it's a fantasy playoffs just about all over. Which Bear would you rather have right now down the stretch? Which owner should be more happy, David Montgomery owners or Allen Robinson owners, and why?
I probably got to ride again with David Montgomery. If Matt Nagy kind of, and I know he's not calling the place right now, it's Bill Lazor up in the booth, but if they can kind of put a game together where they run the ball against a Texans team that's, their defense is okay. Obviously, you got J.J. Watt, but they're not running away with the AFC by any means. I think if you run the ball successfully, start eating some clock like you should, put points on the board. David Montgomery has the potential to give you 15 to 20 points a game, if not even more, if he finds the end zone successfully.
Yeah, Montgomery is going to easily probably help impact you guys, especially in PPR leagues, as he does catch a good amount of passes out of the Bears' backfield as well. And I think if the Bears want to continue trying to stay close in the ball games and perhaps winning games, I mean, we've seen it last week. They tried to throw at the end. Trubisky fumbled on their own goal line. Perhaps the recipe is what Alex is saying: stick with the ground, stick with Montgomery, and ride him to victory. So you heard it here first, fantasy football fans. Get Montgomery in your lineups this week. Not even a question. We like that play more than Allen Robinson. Alex, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And, we'll look forward to seeing how the Bears do this Sunday.
Absolutely. I mean, we can only keep our fingers crossed, but I would not hold my breath as a Bears fan. I'm sorry. It's just where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of Bears fans do feel like that. So don't feel like you're out of the norm there. I feel like that's the majority rules.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thanks again, Alex. You have a great night.
Thank you. You too, man.
That's Alex Ruiz from Chicago's own Row 7 podcast. Great podcast. Go check them out. They cover all Chicago sports, particularly the White Sox and the Bears and the Blackhawks and the Bulls. So go check them out. Great listen, and they always have great guests on as well, like Big Reek and Mike Martinez and others. So go check him out. You can find him at Rose 7 Podcast, and you can find Alex on Twitter as well. At I forget his Twitter handle, but I will mention it as soon as I find it here in a second. But we got a lot of great guests still. Oh, and I have it right here, Alex_RG8. So go follow him there. Thanks again, Alex. The Bears are going to be interesting to watch the rest of the way. We'll see how it unfolds. We'll see if they do indeed need a new running back or a new quarterback next offseason. We'll see if David Montgomery is going to be their prestigious running back of the future. We'll see if their GM or head coach will be open to the public for hire coming soon. So that's awesome. Thanks for helping us out with our Bears insight there. Next up in a couple minutes, we'll have Steven to talk about the Jaguars, and then at 7:30 we'll have Tampa Bay Stunna, Buccaneers Stunna, hopping on to talk some Buccaneers football. And then before you know it, to end the night at 7:40, we'll have former German football leaguer Andy Doe on to just talk football a little bit, talk about fantasy, and talk about Arizona Cardinals a little bit. So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. We're excited to have a lot of these guests joining us tonight. We had a lot of football in the past couple of days. We had 2 football games Monday night, and then we had a football game Tuesday night. Last night's game, the Ravens did upbeat the Cowboys. It was expected, but Cowboys had their chances. Greg Zuerlein, if you do own him in fantasy, might be time to get him out of your lineup, as he missed his fair share of kicks, a handful of kicks. That was unpleasant to see. And then Monday night we had Antonio Gibson, one of the better fantasy running backs to this point this season, go down. It wasn't good. He's been a tremendous asset in the football team's backfield. He's caught passes. He's scored touchdowns. He's been a tremendous Robin to Alex Smith's Batman to this point. So we'll see if the Washington football team could overcome that. They did end up beating Pittsburgh, so that's something to watch, how the Washington football team and the Giants unfold in the NFC East down the stretch. And then we had in the nightcap on Monday, the Bills were able to beat the 49ers on the road. We had some big fantasy performers there, in particular Josh Allen. That's nothing new. So another week of football. Tomorrow night we have a good game as well, Patriots and the Rams. So, yeah, just some good matchups lately, some good insight going to happen here shortly. I'm excited to be able to talk to Steven. The Jaguars have been playing good football. Mike Lennon has actually been keeping them alive in games they haven't been able to win those games. Maybe they're tanking a little bit. We'll see how that's going. I don't know. We'll see. I'm interested to see the Jacksonville's 2020 season kind of tinker down a little bit, kind of come to an end here. Nonetheless, without further ado, it is 7:15. I promise you this man, and we're going to give you this man. We're joined here by Steven. Steven, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. How's it going with you?
Good. Thanks for being able to join me again. We missed you in the Skew Zone last week. We're glad to have you back this week. Where can the people follow you at on Twitter?
Texas Trosh. It's Trosch.
How is your fantasy leagues going? Have you had success to this point? How many leagues are you in? Did you make the playoffs? What are we looking like here? How's 2020 fantasy football wrapping up?
Well, first one is that IDP league that I joined with you. I absolutely bombed that. That was a steep learning curve. Other than that, I think I'm 4 out of 7 with playoffs. I did have one league where I'm the highest scorer and finished in 8th place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is a rarity. I hate when that happens. I was actually on that trajectory in one of my leagues at the beginning of the year. I had the most points in the league, and I was second to last. I ended up making the playoffs. That's a word. Who did you have on that team to help you to 8th place, but perhaps some of the most points there? That sucks.
I mean, my running backs are Jacobs and Carson. I got Robinson. I've got Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley. I mean, it's a pretty decently stacked team.
Sounds like a Pro Bowl roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was 6 teams in the league were 7-6, and it was just like every single team was like close to 500. I think there's like 2 more. It's 6 and 7, which is where I finished.
Yeah, I feel like in a lot of leagues this year, I'm in 8 leagues. I made playoffs in 5 of them, but in majority of my leagues, I feel like a ton of teams finish in that 6 and 7 to 7 and 6 range, more than we've ever seen before. I don't know if that's because of injuries and COVID, so more teams are on an even playing field perhaps, or it was just the nature of the 2020 beast since there's a lot more high scores. Who's one guy that you recommend to people? It doesn't have to be a Jaguar. We've been talking primarily Jaguars. We're going to get into them in a little bit. But who is one guy in fantasy football that you recommend to people to have on their rosters down the stretch? It's already playoffs week 14. It's crazy.
I mean, one guy I like I mentioned him in the article a few times is Cam Akers. I mean, Darrell Henderson left last week with an injury. Akers got 21 carries. I mean, only got 72 yards, but I mean, he's been getting more and more work. Looks like he's getting more comfortable. He's got a touchdown 2 straight weeks. He's got a rough matchup against New England tomorrow night. But if you can make it out of the first round, he gets the Jets and the Seahawks. So I mean, he's in a prime position to be one of those just fantasy deal breakers that just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, and actually, I think facing the Jets is great any week, but who knows? Greg Williams is gone. Maybe that's going to improve their defense. No, I'm just kidding. That defense is lost no matter what. But yeah, I think that's a great ad right there. Cam Akers, I actually traded or added him. I forget which one if he was available, but I did add him in one of my leagues a couple weeks back, and now he's paying dividends. As you said, Henderson left with an injury. Brown, it doesn't seem like is in too much favor of taking over there. And then Cam Akers the past couple of weeks against the Bucs, he had 7.9 points in a non-PPR format. He had a receiving touchdown against San Fran. He had 9 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. And then last week, as you said, the 21 carries, 72 yards and a touchdown, also adding 22-yard reception. I think Cam Akers is a great play, especially with the Jets and Seahawks down that stretch. This week might be a little tough tomorrow on Thursday Night Football, but if you get past that, week 15 and 16, it is a money spot position. And Steven does write some great articles for Time Skew, so go check out his fantasy football articles. Steven, who's one guy you might be avoiding down the stretch here? If you had to avoid somebody, if you wanted to tell them, hey, don't worry about rostering this guy, don't worry about starting this guy for the playoffs, who would that be?
I mean, I think the ship's kind of sailed on this guy a little bit. Kind of got some redemption the past couple weeks, but I'm still staying away from Marquise Brown. The passing volume is not there in that offense. They don't look the same, I guess they did last season. I mean, they looked good last night, but I mean, it was Dallas. I mean, everyone looks good against them, but he's just more of a boomer bust play at this point. I mean, like if you really need someone in a flex.
Yeah, I agree there. I advise most people when they ask if they should play him, I advise most people probably stay away from him. As you said, it's more of a run-first offense, especially with Dobbins now, and Edwards has emerged a little bit, Ingram, and obviously Lamar Jackson is a running candidate. So Brown is hurt by the lack of other weapons. I don't think that helps him. And then the lack of throwing the football, as you said, it's definitely not the same as last season in Baltimore. So I think that's a good one. One guy who I think is dead weight to this point is Travis Fulgham. And speaking of Fulgham, the Eagles. I mean, what's up with the Eagles? Is Carson Wentz done being a quarterback or a fantasy football quarterback for not only this season, but Steven, do you see him being a fantasy football quarterback in the 2021 season, or do you think Carson Wentz's days are numbered?
I mean, he's most definitely going to be gone from Philly after this season. I mean, I know it's a lot of dead weight, but that relationship seems broken. I would honestly love to see him out in Cincinnati. Like, they're missing Joe Burrow for a season, give him a 1-year prove-it deal. I think he's still really young. He was too good a couple of years ago to be just completely washed. There's got to be still something there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, there's too much talent there to put a fork in his career at this point. I mean, he did have a MVP caliber season. He used to barely turn the ball over. Now this year, it's like, what the hell happened, not only to him, but that Eagles team. Head coach Doug Peterson's been not there. Miles Sanders hasn't been producing like he did last season in his rookie season. Their wide receivers have been injured and unproductive when playing. So it's scary to see. It would be interesting to see him in a Cincinnati 1-year prove-it deal. One place where he could end up if Cam Newton leaves perhaps is New England, if Belichick could make something there, but who knows. Maybe they're going to shed the coach. Maybe they're going to shed the quarterback. That's a decision that Jacksonville's going to have to make as well, and I know we've talked about it before. What do you see them doing next year? I asked Alex Ruiz what the Bears are going to do at quarterback. Will it be a veteran? Will it be a rookie? I probably think Jacksonville's going to draft a rookie, but is there any chance of them perhaps adding a veteran in your eyes to help groom that rookie?
It just depends who's out there. I haven't really done too much research into who's going to be available in the 2021 free agent class, but I mean, at this point, they're getting one of Fields or Lawrence. And I think that's also going to lead to a coaching change as well. I mean, Dave Caldwell's already been fired. You rarely see, let alone it be successful, like a new GM come in and just keep the existing coach. You always usually see a GM bring in his own coaching staff. So, I mean, I think things are going to look a lot different in Jacksonville come next year.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of good coaches to choose from, perhaps. Harbaugh might put his name back in that ring. We heard today that Marv Lewis has been a popular name. Eric Bieniemy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator, is going to be in high pursuit. So we'll see if they can land one of those guys. And, yeah, I think that they're obviously going to draft one of those quarterbacks as well. It'll be interesting to see how the culture changes in Jacksonville over the next couple of seasons. With that being said, we're here for a couple more minutes here with Steven as we talk fantasy football and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Steven, are you in more PPR formats or are you in more standard league formats? And at this point in time, what do you prefer to the average newbie fantasy football fan out there? Would you rather be in PPR leagues or standard?
At this point, I'm in every league I'm in is in some kind of PPR, like whether it's 0.5 or full. And I mean, I definitely prefer the PPR aspect of it. It gives you a lot. It gives you some routes to different strategies. You can choose different receivers for different reasons, and I think it makes fantasy football more interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more points scored and generated from PPR, and it incorporates players a lot better. And it's interesting to see some leagues are 1, some leagues are 0.5, some leagues are none. It's kind of cool to see the variety of leagues. I'm in a league this year, which I've never been in before. It's a gauntlet league where each week the lowest scorer gets eliminated. I'm actually still live in that league, started off at 17 teams down to 4. It's just different, cool, or it's cool to see different formats, different leagues. Are you in any unique fantasy leagues or dynasty leagues, perhaps? And would you recommend a dynasty league to people?
I'm in a few keeper leagues. I mean, like the dynasty I'm in, I'm more in dynasty for baseball at this point. I would definitely recommend doing it though. I'm going to get into a lot of dynasty leagues, like in the off season. The most interesting one though, it's actually with Jack. It's you have to field a roster of solely rookies, and you get 4 veterans to have in your lineup.
Wow, that's pretty fun. Who's the 4 veterans you got in your lineup?
It changes every week. I mean, I actually got lucky because I had Jalen Hurts on my roster, so I can put him at quarterback. But I got Eckler, Keenan Allen, Goddard, and I'm picking someone else up because I can drop Matt Ryan.
See, that's a really fun league, and I just love the uniqueness and creativity of some leagues. Jack, shout out to you, kind sir, for that. That sounds cool. I'd love to get in a league like that next year. I know Pride has mentioned a couple times. He does an initials-only team. I could only imagine how hard that is to run a team. You couldn't really have had a QB too often this season if you're only running it off of initials. Steven, any last words here for fantasy football guys down the stretch as they come to the playoffs this week?
Don't overthink your plays. I have lost too many matchups trying to play it, super sneaky, like picking someone up off of waivers who I thought was going to explode. Just stick to what you know. Just play the best players and relax. You should be fine.
Yeah, I agree there. Don't get too cute. Play the big guys. Play who's got you to the dance, and I think good things should happen for most fantasy players. Steven, thanks so much for joining us. We hope to be joined by you next Wednesday.
All right, sounds good. And it's a good time as always.
Yep, always a good time. That's Steven stepping into the Skew Zone again. Once again, just a great time. Skew contributor and writer for fantasy in Jacksonville. And just a great football brain as well, one of the best there is. And once again, it is a holiday season. We are a proud partner of the Time Skew podcast, and we are Time Skew. You can go to timeskew.com/shop today for all of your holiday needs, your stocking stuffer goods, and your warm clothing to stay warm this holiday season. Perhaps face mask to stay safe as well. So go over to timeskewed.com/shop today for those holiday needs. Type in code STREAMER now to save 10% at checkout. So that was Steven with the Jaguars. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in Jacksonville. From one Florida team to another, we got a Buccaneers person coming in. We're joined shortly by Tampa Bay Stunna, Matt. Just a great football brain, great Twitter brain, very knowledgeable in not only Tampa Bay Buccaneers talk, but Madden talk as well. Without further ado, we're going to bring him in a few minutes early. Matt, how are we doing?
Great. Can you feel me all right, Tony? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I could hear you all right.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I'm doing great tonight. How you doing? Just driving home from church?
I'm doing good. It's always a good night to go to church.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, so how are you looking forward to the Buccaneers this Sunday? Bruce Arians has a lot of questions to answer. Do you think they're going to be answered this Sunday?
I think we're going to do all right. I don't know too much about Minnesota's pass rush. I heard they had issues with it earlier in the year. We pretty much dominate with a team that can't rush the passer. So anytime we see a team that's not top 10 in pass rush, we're pretty much going to win that game. So I'm not too familiar with Minnesota's pass rush. I don't know who they have as the edge rushers. But it all like always in Buccaneer lore, it comes down to our O-line play. And if we can protect our passer, if we can do that, I feel pretty confident.
Yeah, I too feel confident when we can protect Tom Brady that it's going to equate to a win. What do you say to the naysayers, the haters of Bruce Arians, the third most winningest coach in Buccaneers franchise history?
Correct. If Bruce Arians goes 11-5 this season, he will have tied the best record Tony Dungy ever put out, a Hall of Fame coach. Okay, the Bruce Arians hate. Let's be honest. It comes from a certain segment of so-called Bucs fans, which are really FSU fanboys, and they're fans of a third-string quarterback that's not on our team anymore. So they feel that they want to hang around and discourage our head coach. But I don't see them doing that on. I don't see them talking about nobody else as affiliated with this player, but they just want to bring down our head coach because actually they should owe a lot of gratitude to our head coach because he didn't stick by this player when he could have easily benched that player last season. So the BA hate, like I said, it either comes from new fans, Patriot fans, or FSU fans. Those are the three people that hate BA. The real Buccaneer fans that have supported this team and been behind this team for years, they know that we're lucky to have this head coach because we've had a lot of bad head coaches here recently.
Yeah, we're 7-5. We're in the best spot we've been in quite some time now. I agree. It's not so much Bruce Arians. What do you think is the central focus of perhaps the struggles offensively with the Buccaneers team?
The central focus is not being able to run the ball effectively. When we can line up and hand the ball off, aka the Carolina Panther game, we do well. Or Denver, you remember Denver, we ran the ball effectively as well. So what happens is we run the ball first, we throw it incomplete on second, now we're 3rd and 7. That's not a very good down and distance in the NFL. Okay, or we get in a second and 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4, and we can't hand the ball off in that situation because we're averaging 1.8 yards a carry. So it has a lot to do with, again, offensive line play. It's not the running backs. We have good running backs. So the O-line has to create holes. And at times they do, at times they don't. It really has to do with level of competition more than anything else. Because the teams that we can't seem to run the ball on are those teams with strong defensive lines. They win the matchup with our O-line. So, I don't know. I mean, like some of our offensive linemen play phenomenal, like Jensen. So we just need to get that kind of effort out of everybody, and I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, I wish everybody brought the same grit that Ryan Jensen did every Sunday. Matt, I know you keep up with the Buccaneers and Madden ratings. How are we looking nowadays? Is it a little more justified, or is EA Swami still lacking?
Unfortunately, I think that we're a lot better with our offensive ratings. I mean, there was a time, I think Cap is up to like a 74, 75, which is average, and before he was in the 60s. And, they've disrespected us for years, but we're more popular now, so it's harder to do that. So our offense and Madden is quite dynamic. It kind of like real life where our O-line is a little underrated, but the rest of our offense is very good. But our defense is severely underrated. And our defense has never gotten credit for being the number one rushing defense. And on Madden, you can run the ball on the Buccaneers, which you shouldn't be able to in real life. When you have the LA Rams averaging 132 rushing yards a game and get 32 against us, and they abandon the run now. The Rams are a run-heavy team, and they abandon the run against the Bucs. That should tell you right there that our run defense is serious, and it's just not that serious on the game. But just like Mo, my buddy likes to say all the time, if we win, they got to give us credit. They always give the playoff teams better ratings on there every year. So the Buccaneers have to support us fans and get in the playoffs and win games so that we as fans can get on the EA ratings adjusters and tell them to give our players respect. Because it's funny, it's like if you're not winning, they don't respect you, but yet they'll rate the people they like on lower teams because if they like somebody, they'll give them ratings. It's very subjective, unfortunately. and the Buccaneers are not a national media type team. So it's just the way it is with that crew, and hopefully they'll get it right. But if not, I think competition's gonna even that out anyway.
That's a shame to see. I do hope that we could see justified Buccaneers in ratings, especially with the way we've been playing at 7-5. Factors for the rest of the season. What do you see our record ending at, and how far do you see us getting?
I definitely, it's my hope and my dream that we go 11-5, and I don't see any reason we shouldn't. If we were going to lose a game, it would be Sunday because the Vikings are decent. They're average 6-6. They're an average NFL team. So and they can run the ball, which is something that we have a strength against. I think we've only the Saints have been able to run the ball on us effectively. So I think I like 11-5. I don't see the problem. I honestly think we're going to go 10-5 and then just throw the last game because we don't have a bye in the playoffs. So we might just shut down everybody on that last game against Atlanta as a throwaway game. You see, at Detroit and at Atlanta, those are fast tracks. And we actually do very well on Dome because of our athletes on offense. So Dome surfaces actually favor us. And so those games are going to actually favor us at Atlanta, at Detroit, because they're on a fast track. Minnesota this weekend, unfortunately on a BA, we haven't won at home as much as we need to, and we really need to defend our home field. So really our season comes down to Sunday as far as the regular season. On the playoffs, I expect us to go 1-1. If we make the Super Bowl, it'll be a blessing, but I don't think that we've really played like a Super Bowl team. But you never know how that goes. You could get in the playoffs to get hot. When Green Bay won the Super Bowl, they didn't play like a Super Bowl team during the season, nor did New York Giants in either one of their Super Bowl appearances. So, anything's possible. These are grown men, and grown men are paid professionals, so they can flip the switch. But, you want to see it to get more encouragement. You want to have that success so you can get your confidence up.
Yeah, and you're right on that. Those teams were 10-6 and made great runs. So we'll see if the Bucs get 10-6 or 11-5 and make a great run there. It would be interesting to see how Tom Brady does in the playoffs for Tampa. I am glad you brought up that Bruce Arians' home record hasn't been there. Other than Bruce Arians, a lot of Bucs coaches have struggled at home lately. What do you think the reason is behind the Bucs' recent home struggles over the past decade or so?
Talent. We can usually win at home if we get a 1:00 start because, that's how the elements favor us. It's like if you go up north, the elements favor running the ball. And the elements favor, the wind. The weather doesn't allow you to pass it because of the wind and the slushy field conditions. And we're quite the opposite here in Florida. What we have, our advantage is the heat. So what we do, and what we've always done, is we always get those home games when we have a 1:00 start and we cook our opponent. A couple years ago when we beat Philly, I had heat exhaustion after that game in the stands. So it was a hot day, And in fact, that's like the last 1:00 start we had in November. So basically, we the last couple of years we quit having 1:00 starts in. I meant September. I didn't mean November. I meant September. So we no longer have 1:00 starts in September. They're either going to be 4:00, or or on the road. Basically, if it's 1:00. So we don't play home games in September at 1:00 anymore because of the heat conditions. And so that has a little bit to do with it, but a lot has to do with talent, man. Teams can roll their roster out on the field against us, and they can win the game. And that's another thing Bruce Arians has done for this franchise. The BA haters, I don't get it. The one thing about it, Jason Light has drafted a lot better the last couple of years under Bruce Arians' tutelage. So it's got a little bit to do with talent and a little bit to do with scheduling.
Yeah, our drafting is not extraordinarily better under Bruce Arians' tutelage with Jason Light. It's been interesting to see the draft get exponentially better under Bruce Arians. We're joined here by Campus Stunna. A couple more minutes here tonight. Thanks so much again for making time to join us. Yeah, I too am against Bruce Arians haters. I think he's one of my favorite Bucks coaches in history. Where do you stand on GM Jason Light, however?
Jason Light, he's done a great job. He's done a great job because you got to think about what we've had. Rich McKay was probably the best GM we ever had. Going before Rich McKay, all the GMs we had were terrible. Okay, and then Rich McKay, we should have not get rid of him. I know him and Gruden butted heads, but sometimes that's the best thing to do if you have a coach that likes to spend money on trash. You got to have a GM to keep in check. And so they didn't like that. They gave us a GM and Bruce Allen that would get along with Gruden. Well, Bruce Allen was terrible in the draft and terrible with free agents. He hurt us badly. Okay. So other than the Joey Galloway trade, I can't remember too many that were successful. So that really hurt. And then you had Mark Dominic, who gave up a first-round pick to the Jets for Revis Island, who they weren't going to re-sign anyway. So we negotiated against ourselves and gave away a first-round pick, and because the trade was so bad, we had to end up cutting Revis anyway. So Dominic did not do us a lot of favors. I can't think of too many players that he drafted that you would think is Hall of Fames. But then you get Jason Light, his first draft, he drafts Mike Evans, who's a Hall of Fame player. So we really haven't had anyone drafted Hall of Fame type players in between Rich McKay and Jason Light. So to me, Jason Light is definitely one of the top GMs ever, top two GMs ever, him and Rich McKay. And in the future, we'll find out who's the best, but I think he's definitely top two. And I love the players he brought in, but he got a lot better. He started out we had a lot of terrible drafts up until, Aaron's got here, but he would always get one or two gems. Like I mentioned, the 2014 draft, we got Evans, and then we got ASJ, and then we got Chris Sims. So you wasted you wasted the rest of the draft, and he's never done well in rounds 5, 6, or 7. I can't think of too many 6 or 7 rounders that have ever made the team. Okay, so it's I like him a lot, but I think he's done a lot better with BA, and I don't know if that's a scouting thing, or I don't know if he's just been trying to please his head coaches too much.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I think that he's had some really good draft picks, and especially under BA. And at the same time, we've traded all right lately, as of late at least. So we've made minor ones, never anything too big. But real quick here, last topic, I should say. We did lose a great one today. Coach Ray Perkins, he coached the Buccaneers from 1987 to 1990. Do you have any memories of Coach Perkins? I know it wasn't the Buccaneers' brightest of days, but he was a pretty bright football guy.
I don't want to talk bad about Ray Perkins. I would say call in the 620 and speak to Ian Beckles about Ray Perkins. Okay, Ray Perkins did a lot of terrible things for Tampa. All right, he put our players through 3-a-days during training camp. Basically like what you saw with the Junction Boys. All right, he was doing that to NFL players, and a lot of our guys had a short career because of Ray Perkins. And then on top of that, we did terrible in the drafts. In 1990, we could have had Junior Seau or Emmitt Smith, and we got Keith McCants instead. All right. So in fact, Richard Williamson became the coach in 1991 because the players liked Richard Williamson, and they did it because everybody hated Ray Perkins. Okay.
Isn't Keith McCants the radio dude now? Who has Tampa?
Ian Beckles is on 620. Yes, Ian Beckles is on 620. He was a 1990 draft pick for the Bucks. He played offensive guard. He was a great mentor for me growing up. I really respected Ian Beckles. Yeah, he's on the 3:00 on 6:20 a.m. 95.3 on Twitter, because I guess that's their FM station, but everyone listens to him on AM. But WDAE in the afternoon, Ian Beckles. If you want to call into him and ask for some Ray Perkins stories, he's got a lot of them. But Ray Perkins, I want to rest in peace. I got in trouble on Facebook for saying some negative things about him today, and so I'm going to guard my tongue with it. But let's just say he brought a lot of pain to my family. We used to drive all the way to Venice to watch the games because they were blacked out locally, and then we would drive to Venice and end up watching the Dolphins anyway because the Bucks would be blown out before halftime. So it's just a lot of bad memories with Ray. You know, growing up in the 80s, watching the Bucks was very painful, very painful. Okay, but
those were the dark days of Buccaneers football. That's for sure.
The creamsicle and the clock numbers are very comparable. Okay, they're very comparable for Bucks lore. However, I think the creamsicle was worse because at least we never won with the clock numbers. You understand? With the creamsicles, we could have played the Steelers in the Super Bowl. So in 1979. So we actually won in those uniforms, and then we disgraced the uniforms. Where the clock numbers, we never even respected those uniforms. So it's a little different as far as the way it breaks our hearts, as Bucs fans.
Yeah, and they always seemingly do break our hearts. Buccaneers, Stunna, Tampa, Stunna, thank you so much for your time tonight. We appreciated you coming on and talking Buccaneers.
I want to say a couple things real quick, Tony.
Yep, feel free.
Number one, I really want to go to the Senior Bowl this year. So if you got time, man, I've been talking to Buck What You Heard on Twitter about trying to make that a go. And the difference that we have under Jason Light, we only trade down now. You see what I'm saying? And we never trade away our first-round pick, and we always use that first-round pick to plug a hole. So if we lose a starter in the offseason, we will save that first-round pick and plug that starting position with that first-round pick. And I think that strategy has changed from Mark Dominic to what we're doing now, and that's why I think we're so much better. But I will say, 2016 draft was terrible. 2017 was hit or miss. So we got a lot better with Bruce Arians. And these Bruce Arians haters, they need to go somewhere, man. Do these people think Tom Brady would have ever came here without Bruce Arians? And then do they think we would have got any of these free agents without Tom Brady? So, I mean, these guys don't care about the Bucs. They care about their own ego. And real Bucs fans know the truth about Bruce Arians, and they know the truth about Jason Light, and they know the truth about our team, and where we're at now as opposed to where we've been.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of things you said tonight are true and have been true about the Buccaneers, especially about BA. I'm with BA. I'm a BA bandit, so we'll continue riding with Bruce Arians together. Thanks so much, Buccaneers, and I hope you have a great night.
All right, you too, man. Hit me up anytime, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. Let's see if we could get a group for the Senior Bowl, maybe. Who knows?
That's what I want to do. Like I said, if you tweet Buck What You Heard, let's find out what section the tickets are in, and we can all get on Ticketmaster, get our own tickets as long as we're on the same section. You know what I mean? And if you come down here, I can drive to Montgomery in less than a day, and we'll get a hotel outside of town. So anybody wants to do it, I'm with it. Start a thread on Twitter. I'll get people to jump in there. I'm with it, man. We got to be super Bucs fans because these other fan bases, they get.
Yeah, well, we lost him.
Fan base. We getting too much. There's too much negativity and too much, foolishness on Twitter that makes us look bad. We got to go out there. We got to be. I was going to go to the draft, but of course it got shut down. Because it was supposed to be in Kansas City, and I was going to go. So that's something we got to do. We got to go to the draft. We got to go Senior Bowl. We got to go to away games. Be like the big nasties and the Buck nasties of the fan base to go out there and really represent.
We certainly do, Matt. We'll get a talk going on that later, perhaps on Twitter. Thanks again so much for stopping by.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. Go Bucks.
Yep, go Bucks. And that was Buccaneers Stunna, Tampa Stunna, great guy. Man, it's already at 7:50. I can't even waste time here. I got to bring in my partner in crime, my buddy here. Thanks again, Buccaneers Stunna. It was incredible talking Bucks football. I think you hit the nail on the head on a lot of things. I too am a big Bruce Arians guy. I too enjoy what the Buccaneers have done so far this year. Speaking of what the Buccaneers have done so far this year, a lot of partying. We got a partier in the building. We got Andy Doe going on. Andy, how we doing?
What's going on, Tones? How we doing?
Good. It's another Wednesday, another time in the Skew zone. I'm glad we could get a German football player's mind wrapped around some things. It's been a crazy one.
Yeah, man. Yeah, where was that guy calling from? An alleyway? That was wild.
I think he was perhaps calling on the way home. He was driving home, I think so.
Man,
yeah.
that was a journey. I enjoyed watching that as much as I could.
Yeah, it was a journey. We do appreciate him calling in and be able to join us, but it was a journey. It was an interesting scenery going on.
Oh, crack me up, man. I love it. But hey, I'm ready to talk to you, man.
Yeah. I was interested in perhaps going to do some crosstalk there, but didn't get the chance to. So anyways, Andy, Arizona's struggling a little bit now. Since the last time we talked, a lot's changed. How do you think their fortune ends up for the rest of the season? Do they make the playoffs? They're teetering on the edge right now. Things could be looking a little better.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be an absolute moron to think that there's a possibility that they can't make the playoffs or they won't make the playoffs. So, we're staying hopeful out here as much as we can. There are some bright spots that have happened since we spoke last. I know the wins haven't been tallied up, but man, something that I was looking for a while was the emergence of Simmons coming back. High draft pick. Early on, they were like, where's this guy at? Why isn't he playing? Why isn't he starting? Man, he's come up with some pretty impact plays. So I'm just hoping that, everything else kind of collects on all cylinders. K1 continues to progress. And, man, give D-Hop the ball. Let's go.
Yeah, D-Hop needs to be fed, and Simmons was that elite defender that people were hoping for early on in the year, so I think that perhaps him being inserted back into that lineup could be game-changing. One thing that's interesting to me about Kyler Murray is his downward trend in production in terms of running the football a little bit the past couple weeks. Do you think that – don't get me wrong, he's still rated the #1 fantasy football quarterback. He's still putting up pretty decent fantasy numbers, nothing like he did at the beginning. But, he had some big games early on in the beginning. He ran for 91 yards and a touchdown, 106 and a touchdown, 61 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now the past 3 games combined, he has 15 carries for just over 60 yards. Do you think that that attributes to defenses preparing for him more, or do you think that the Cardinals saying they don't want to injure their star?
Yeah, I'd probably go with the latter on that. You can always have a spy on. It's difficult to have a spy on when you have such great receivers and running backs that can catch out of the backfield. So I don't think there's an excuse. I mean, we saw Lamar just yesterday run up the middle for 67 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that's what Kyler's been averaging, the last or total in the last couple games. So, yeah, man, there's a lot of good running quarterbacks. I'd probably, more or less say the risk of getting him injured. We want to see him down the line. But I mean, I really love that the Ravens kind of have a quarterback sneak up the middle as one of their primary play calls. That's absolutely wild to me. It's old school football. I love it. If the Cardinals could kind of, get in the realm of that, that'd be great. Their offensive line isn't the best offensive line they've had in the last couple of years, but they're certainly not the worst. So, they can definitely do some damage. But like I said, man, when you have all those weapons, you can't really have a spy on Kyler. And so, we're just holding our breath right now.
Yeah, I think you make a great point that Lamar Jackson run up the middle was pretty entertaining, and I think we've had a lot of old school football going on here, or at least trying to be had. I know on Monday night, Washington tried a trick play where they put their tight end under center, who used to be a quarterback, and it looked good until the wide receiver got his block shed, and it was a loss. And then on Thanksgiving, I think it was, we had the good old fumble Rooski being performed. So yeah, I love the old school football. I think it would be good if the Cardinals could adapt to some of those ways. I know Cliff Kingsbury is very innovative in his play calling, but perhaps maybe get some of that old quarterback ground and style pounding, or some old school fumble Rooskies, and that would be fun to see. Just other than that, football in general, Andy, it's already week 14. It's flowing by. Who's a team to watch in the NFC and AFC for you down the stretch?
Man, I really liked how the Bills played last week. Josh Allen looked really good. Man, I'm so hit or miss on the Rams. Sometimes I'm like, man, the Rams can't be beaten. Like that play action. Once they have that down to a science, I mean, it's really hard to come back from them because they waste so much time. And then they can just dink and dunk down the field. Man, those two teams right there are kind of hit or miss on going really far in the playoffs for me. But man, the NFC East, man, like that, like the whole division, that's going to shake up everything. It really is, and so be careful of that. Let's keep our eyes on that one. That front seven from Washington, man. I mean, can you get better than that?
Yeah, I know. That's been incredible, especially with Chase Young getting drafted there. I think he's attributed to that greatly. They got some other good veterans such as Ryan Kerrigan, and that middle D-line, interior D-line has been very strong. But yeah, I think there's some interesting headlines going on. I think guys like Josh Allen have been making names for themselves and whatnot. But focus into your hometown here in Chicago for a minute.
Yep.
What's going on there? They've lost quite a bit in a row. Do you think they're done for the season, Alex? We had him on earlier. He said so. Do you think they should put a nail in the coffin?
Yeah, blow it up, man. Honestly, I'm forever an optimist. I usually keep everything pretty positive in my life, but when it's this negative and this many losses and no accountability, you have to blow it up. I mean, you constantly see the memes and the stats of the past Bears seasons under Lovie Smith, and then you compare that to the Tressman days, and then now. Under Nagy, it's absolutely brutal. I mean, we haven't lost 6 in a row since 2002. Man, that's embarrassing, especially a coach that was just coach of the year 2 years ago, won the NFC North. I mean, there's no excuses. And then when they ask him, what's going on, he says, I don't know. Dude, yeah. you know, it's you. You're the problem.
Yeah, he looks scared, and it might be his time to go. I think a lot of Bears fans would be happy to flip the page here. Andy, we got a few minutes left here.
Yeah.
Name your MVP predictions for this football season, and name some guys you think might win Rookie of the Year.
Gosh. Rookie of the Year, man, I really like Jefferson in Minnesota. Really like him. MVP is kind of a toss-up, but to kind of go on a different point, comeback player is definitely Alex Smith. I mean, I really don't know who else could even be in the talks. I think J.J. Watt had that really, really awesome post about Alex's journey and coming back from not only just to play, but like to win games. That's impressive. I'm curious to ask you, who do you have in the MVP race?
Man, the MVP race is one right now that it looked like at the beginning of the year Russell Wilson was going to run away with it, kind of. Now I'm leaning towards maybe to see what Josh Allen, if he could wrangle in an MVP trophy up in Buffalo. And I don't know. I definitely agree that Alex Smith looks like a good winner for comeback player of the year. See, MVP is a position that's always been interesting to me because I feel like people always just assume, the offensive player of the year should be the MVP, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's a little more than that. It is what it stands for. It's the MVP, the most valuable player of the team.
Yeah, if you take a certain defensive player off the field, on some of the best defenses, I mean, it greatly impacts that. You're thinking some top-notch linebackers. Obviously the MVP caliber players are going to be, Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, shout out Brett. But I don't know. We'll see. But you made a good point on the defensive side of the ball too. There's some studs out there that have been making an impact, and you know what, man? I mean, if the R words start winning games, Chase Young maybe. I mean, he's been an absolute force.
Yeah. What to call that team? Because you don't want to call them the football team because you could be talking about any team, right?
Pigskins.
Yeah, the Pigskins. You've been a big advocate for the Pigskins. We're going to be advocating the Pigskins. I've said the Potato Skins before. It'll be interesting to see if they stay at the football team or what they turn into. But yeah, Chase Young, for sure, defensive rookie of the year, one would think, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think the only competition for defensive players that really stand out to me, Winfield has been a stud. I mean, this isn't a rookie, but Budda Baker has been performing incredible. I mean, there's just a lot of guys out there that have been absolutely making a name for themselves, and they should be proud. But man, when it comes to MVP votes, I'm just glad that I don't really have a vote on that. That's just tough.
Yeah, that and the Hall of Fame both would be two of the hardest votes to perhaps make in a sports person's lifetime. We're over the 8 o'clock hour. Andy, where can the people follow you at before we let you go?
Man, I'm pretty quiet, dude. But you can find me on Instagram, Andy Doe 77. Just been chilling, riding my bike, making food and eating food. So, just find me, talk to me. We'll talk sports.
Yeah, hopefully we could get AZ Andy back on next Wednesday or the Wednesday after. Andy, thanks so much. Go follow him. Go talk sports. Go watch him chef it up.
Tones, I appreciate it, man. You have a great rest of the night, man.
Yeah, you too, Andy. Thanks so much. That was AZ Andy, very good friend of mine, former German Football League football player, very knowledgeable football guy for both the Cardinals and the Bears. That was a fast Skew Zone, just like that. We're over an hour. It's always a blast every Wednesday, 7 to 8 Central. We go a little over because we like to bring the people great football news. We had great guests up and down the clock tonight. Started off the 7 o'clock hour with Alex Ruiz from Row 7 Podcast. At 7:15, we were joined by Steven, our great fantasy and Jacksonville writer and contributor for Time Skew. Then at 7:30, we had Tampa, Stunna on, a lifelong Buccaneers fan. Then to end the night, we had Andy Doe, former German football leaguer. Thanks so much, guys. You could follow me at Tricky Tones BGTE on Twitter. Make sure to check out Time Skew's podcast network at TSPN_ for a variety of great podcasts such as Buccateers, a Buccaneers podcast, Cardboard and Cracker Jacks, Cleve and Me, Big Rican on sports, Fugazi Sports, Chain Clankers, Armchair Quarterback Show, just a bunch of great shows over there. Sorry if I missed you. Once again, I'm Tampa Tones. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a guest tonight, and thanks to you listeners, as always, the most. And we will see you next Wednesday, live at 7, same spot, same place, same time. Thanks for joining the Skew Zone. Goodbye.